let's dig right into that big trade last night, Frank, between the Calgary Flames and Philadelphia Flyers. The main pieces, Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost heading north up to Alberta. Andrei Kuzmenko, Jacob Peltier going to Philly, along with a second-round pick in 2025. And hilariously enough, a seventh-round pick in 2028. I saw someone joke, Frank, they were like, a bag of pucks might have actually given them a bit more value here.
Yeah, this was actually, one thing that popped up in conversation with a couple managers around the league in text message last night. They go, can you imagine what helped put this deal over the finish line? Let me think of the least valuable asset that I have. And then, you know what? We're going to make it 4 years from now. So anyway, always in good fun to see a seventh round pick exchanged. But yeah, nonetheless, I actually really like this deal from the Calgary Flames perspective. This is a team that has really struggled to score, and they get two prime middle six forwards whose value had been depressed by the nature of them clearly needing a fresh start. And the Flames have essentially added what I think on the low end is 45 goals and 90 points to their lineup. And two guys that just fit with what they're building under team control. The Flyers are happy to get off of Joel Farabee's contract for the next 3 seasons. And this is a Flames team that, with Dustin Wolf in net, is much closer to the playoffs than they probably imagined. Not a deal to help push them in now, but a deal that I think they would have made regardless, as they're looking to add skill and talent.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I'm going to echo what you're saying. Like, I like the Flames taking this shot. Wolf is legit. Like you said, you have your kind of star to build around, even if it's not your, prototypical franchise centerman who's going to score you 50 goals or whatever, but you have a star now, and you know that. You've learned that over the last 50 games. So there's no need to go into a deep rebuild. There's basically, it might be impossible to go into a deep rebuild because Dustin Wolf's just going to stop you from being able to do that. So you go.
It was anyway, I think, with Kadri and Huberdeau and Weegar and those guys on the roster. Wolf just pushes you further away from that. And so this isn't a massive move in the other direction, but this was a smart way to add skill and talent that doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. I mean, look at this from Calgary's perspective. Peltier was on waivers at one point earlier this year, and Kuzmenko, with his depressed game at this point, and the contract that he had, $5 million to finish off this year, they would have been hard pressed to get anything for him. So the fact that they're able to parlay this into and take on a little bit of risk in Farabee's contract into two middle six forwards, I think this works perfectly.
Yeah, I think it does too. The one thing I would say, if I'm going to throw a bit of caution from the Calgary perspective, is, I like this style of a move. Take shots on guys who are in their mid-20s. Like you said, team control, 20-goal upside here, especially with a piece like Joel Farabee. But I also do think you can only do this kind of a move so many times before you risk having a forward group that looks like the Seattle Kraken, right? Like, you can't just fill your lineup with a bunch of average and a bunch of guys with term and team control, because then you lose the ability to get star players in your lineup. Like, I like this shot. I think they could maybe even do it again and stay in this kind of a market. But eventually you do also need like true high-end difference makers in your forward group.
Yeah, but where are they going to come from? I mean, that's the real question. Like, how are you going to get your hands on one of those guys? So unless you have a ready-made idea, which I'm sure the Flames have thought about or talked about, I'm not necessarily seeing the path. So for now, when you struggle to score, the Flames can't get to 4 goals to save their lives. When you struggle to score, the only way out is through.
Yeah, and that is a totally fair point. Again, I really like this deal for the Calgary Flames. And if you're going to be in the mix like this, and like we talked about, I think it was yesterday on the show, if you're already giving up your first round pick to the Montreal Canadiens, like, just push. There's no need to not all in, but give this thing and give this group a legit chance to get into the Stanley Cup playoffs this season.
And I think, by the way, that there is a higher ceiling for Farabee and Frost. I think those guys were beaten down. I mean, look at Farabee's game last year, not really deployed correctly, not brimming with confidence, and still ends up with 22 goals and 50 points. If you were to tell me that Morgan Frost a season from now is a 65 to 70 point center in the NHL, I wouldn't be shocked. So these are worthy gambles to make. I think there is a higher end to both of their games. They're not complete players by any stretch of the imagination, but just getting them confidence, I think, will go a long way.
And listen, this is going to be a theme of today's show, and Farabee has 3 more years on his deal. But hey, 2 years from now, and the cap is whatever we think the cap's going to be now, what is $5 million for Joel Farabee? Even if he's a 15-goal third-line winger for you, it's like, yeah, okay, that's not like a crazy overpay.
No, and again, worth 22 goals and 50 points. He was kind of at $5 million already.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about the flip side of this thing. Andrei Kuzmenko, basically 1 year to the day since he was traded to Calgary from Vancouver in that Elias Lindholm deal. The Russian forward is on the move once again. He is a streaky goal scorer, and that's basically exactly what he was with Calgary. When he came over last year at the deadline, he popped 14 goals in his first 29 games with the Flames, and had Flames fans being like, whoa, do you extend this guy? Do you keep him around for the long haul? This year, it's gone south. 4 goals in 37 games. And for the Flyers to sit here and take on Kuzmenko, a guy who was a distressed asset, as you said, Jacob Pelche, cleared waivers early in the season. They did get a second-round pick. Was this move basically just all about getting out of Farabee?
That was a big part of it, was definitely clearing the cap space to move off of Joel Farabee. But the other part is to see if this not only helps Andrei Kuzmenko come out of his shell again, but how might this help Matvei Michkov? These two guys were teammates in Russia, have a connection, and you watch a game like last night for the Flyers, fireworks again on the bench with John Tortorella and Michkov. Does having another guy who speaks the language, is able to maybe, make this a little bit more comfortable for Michkov moving forward, does that help? It's a shot in the dark. I think there's a 50-50 chance. It's a coin flip. Maybe Kuzmenko shows something. Maybe he shows nothing. Maybe it helps Michkov. Maybe it doesn't. But worth a try for a guy that was on the scrap heap. It's an expiring contract. Really no harm, no foul. And Pelche, I wonder, a guy who has definitely looked better since his call up this year, has played much closer to an everyday player, but at 5'9", generously listed at 5'9". Do the Flyers maybe see something in Pelche, as Danny Briere, smaller guy himself, who knew that he needed a little extra opportunity to get where he was going in his NHL career? Maybe they have something there. Look, Farabee is a few hundred games into his NHL career. Him and Pelche are essentially the same age. So the Flyers didn't really get much younger here. Pelche doesn't even have a full NHL season under his belt. So I get the idea of trying to move the money around and making all that work. And I'd be curious to see what the Flyers have up their sleeve. But these are essentially, hey, we're dumping some contracts here. We get a second-round pick in return that we like. They got the better of the 2 second-round picks that Calgary had, because the other one was Colorado's. And we'll see if something works out. And if not, let's not forget the opportunity cost of the salary cap space that we get.
Yeah, and that's what Colin asked. He said, what are the Flyers clearing cap for? And now you go and look, Frank, they're projected to have $25.3 million in cap space next summer. And another thing they now have is 7 picks in the first 2 rounds of the 2025 NHL draft. So what else do you think they could have up their sleeve?
They could be in anything now if they wanted to. They could go after Elias Pettersson. They could get involved in one of the premier free agents this summer if Rantanen makes it to market, or Mitch Marner, whoever it might be. If the Flyers are trying to acquire a difference maker, they've now got more assets and more cap space to do so. And I think in the end, all they did was rip the Band-Aid off. With the way that this was progressing, with the angst that I think existed in that Flyers locker room, Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost were never going to be long-term players for the Flyers. Time was up. And if they weren't making a coaching change, it was time to make a change for them. So this gets ahead of that and now gives them plenty of ample runway to do what it is that they want to do to try and find true difference makers.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.